Today, we're going to be talking about, the current state of global HR payroll. The future is now, what do we have and what's coming? The agenda for today is to give an overview of the GHR payroll release. We're going to talk a little bit about the user experience. I'm going to show you where to go and get some documentation that's available. I'm going to provide an update on beta and early adopter projects. We're going to talk about what's next in terms of the steps that we're taking following up the release of the product. And then we're going to talk about some vision. So some things that are down the road, some closer than others, but definitely some things that are beyond current state. So let's talk about the release overview. So let me go ahead and just do a quick recap for people who may be hearing about this for the first time. Right now, this solution map is showing the current state as it used to be with only a single tenant payroll product available. So we had payroll, it was an add-on, required a number of interfaces in between global HR. In order to sync up the data in between, we were dealing with different technology stacks, different number of interfaces depending on whether you implemented absence or benefits in one place or the other. What this doesn't show is that for some organizations who are already moving to multi-tenant for global HR and had the single tenant payroll, and then we're also adopting Cloud Suite Financials, that there's this other set of interfaces and component called the Global Finance Controller that also adds to the complexity and overall maintenance of the solution. And so what we've been doing is taking the existing single tenant product that people are aware of today, breaking it down to the code level to understand what it's doing, and then rewriting that as a fully integrated module within global HR. So doing away with a lot of the challenges that exist today with these multi-tenant and single tenant hybrids that many organizations have already implemented. So let's talk about what has happened as started of last year, actually. So in the December CU, we delivered our initial version for the US. It was a version that was available for early adopters. We referred to it as being in controlled release, meaning that we weren't selling it just to any given opportunity that was available. We were really tightly controlling who we were going to sell this product to and who we were going to attempt to implement it for. So that was part of the December CU. So no longer dealing with different CTP schedules versus CU updates. Now with the product being integrated within global HR, it's all one release schedule, and it's part of that monthly CU cycle. But in December, we released the remaining areas that were required to launch the product relative to being able to provide payroll foundation, overtime processing, pay cycle, and full integration to Cloud Suite Financials, and then also compliance reporting-based processes. Now, at that time, and even today, the product that we have is not 100% equivalent to the S3 or single tenant payroll yet. So just wanted to make sure that people are aware that, as we are moving, through the launch of this, that there are still some things to do before we can say that there is an exact equivalent from one product to the next. And we'll call those areas out so that you're aware of what some of the limitations still are. In 2020, so as soon as we launched the product, we immediately, the next CU, started to deliver continuous enhancements or continuous flow of enhancements, and are starting to work on some of these things that will get us to that equivalent of the current single tenant product. So working on some federal government enhancements, starting to design TIPS-related processing, and then developing third-party financial integration, which I'll talk a little bit more. So again, just have started to roll out enhancements each and every month, and later this year you'll actually start to see some of the first strategic differentiators between the two products. So just a little bit of clarification. So I mentioned when the product was first launched, we had it in controlled release. So if you were talking to your account managers, they might have told you, yeah, it's in controlled release only for early adopters. As of the first week of May, internally, we've announced that we are going to declare the product GA, and you'll start to see press releases going out and other collateral going out externally. So it was a bit of a soft launch when we released the product initially. Things have gone so well that we're going to actually move forward and declare GA for the US market with some of the exceptions that I already mentioned. Wanted to reiterate that it's an optional module. So if you are implementing global HR, considering it, payroll is there to be implemented, and it's going to be treated as an add-on. So similar to how the single tenant payroll works today, where it's an additional product license that's added on to the global HR suite. Initially, US only, so for you customers out there who maybe have used the Canadian localization or even Middle East, there is the US option that's available now, and it's actually strictly enforced with edit. So there are controls within the system that make sure that we don't use the system in a way that it wasn't intended. Related to financial integrations, we started off with a very tight financial integration to CloudSuite Financials. This was the first financial system integration that we released with the product. Has a great and very tightly knit integration with CloudSuite Financials. And one of the limitations that we had was the inability to integrate with third-party financials in a productized way. So for other systems or even other Infor systems, we didn't have what we call the sort of certified or standardized product-based plumbing required to have integrations with non-CloudSuite Financials products. So that is being alleviated. It is in development, and we intend to have this productized feature available in the September 2020 CU. Right now, that's a limitation that would only impact HCM only customers. So, if you're in that situation, then you can be looking out for the feature set that allows us to integrate with third-party financials in September. The development is well underway. Actually started some testing of it. So everything is tracking that we're going to hit that target for September to have that productized capability. Wanted to reiterate that if you're interested in being an early adopter, you can still check with product management. Let's look at a user group, or maybe it was Hans Mueller's internal, not internal, it's an external facing bi-weekly event where we talk to people who are in the cloud and actually got a lead on an organization that was just done with being on single tenant payroll and wanted to switch over to multi-tenant payroll. And within a matter of a couple of weeks, we got them the path cleared so they could start their implementation. So really excited about that and are taking on early adopters, as I said, if you're still interested. Just to sort of reiterate what I've been talking about as it relates to payroll now being a real component within global HR. It is now just another module along with absence benefits and other examples that you see here that allow us to have payroll as part of global HR. And so what does that mean for our customer base? Well, now it means that we're dealing with just one core HCM application suite with payroll as an optional component. That means that we're just dealing with one tech stack, so no longer having to deal with making Landmark and LSF work together. It's now one tech stack, one database. So no dealing with trying to figure out how to do combined reporting because of data being in different places. One user interface. So in the previous screenshot, you saw that we're now in the same user experience as all the other global HR components. The other important thing is one resource record for all of our HCM business processes. So no longer are there interfaces to sync up data in between areas. Payroll uses the same resource record as core HR does, or as benefits does, or as absence does. Simplified reporting for bursts. So I mentioned that a little bit previously. So for those of you who might have looked at some of the new options for reporting with single tenant payroll, you might have come to the understanding that there's some challenges with combining data in the data lake to be able to get combined reports. Now everything will be going to the data lake, and there'll be a single source for all of the data for your burst reporting. And then finally, to make sure that HR and payroll processes could exist within the same application, we have already introduced some net new features that don't exist in the current single tenant product, where there's a payroll lock now that allows organizations to more tightly manage their pay cycle processing so that they can lock the records that they want to process payroll against, and then allow other users in the system and HR employees to continue doing their updates without having to worry about impacting payroll. So let's talk about user experience. So I already mentioned that we're now having only one user experience that you have to deal with. Everything is now as part of the latest and greatest version of the user interface that you see here. We have also followed the path that was already there for global HR with delivering pre-configured roles that allow individuals access to areas of the application based on the job that they do. What you're looking at here was the initial payroll administrator view that was released in December, which is just really some generic buttons that were shortcuts to certain areas of the application. And within just a couple of CUs, so in the March CU, we actually added some additional functionality for the payroll administrator. So now they have a dashboard that shows cycle progress activity. It also still provides the quick links, but also provides alerts for deduction processing, tax setup, pay period processing, which all allows you to see as a payroll administrator issues that you might have with your pay cycle, and then a very quick link to dig in and get actually into the more detailed areas. As it relates to payroll for the U.S. market, I already stated that that is the one localization that we have right now. Obviously, global HR is a global product, and we'll start to add more country localizations there. We know that we have Canada, we have the Middle East countries that were included with the single tenant product. We intend to add those to the product as well, and then who knows from there? I mean, we could decide that based on some strategic roadmap decisions that maybe there are other countries in Europe or in South America that we might want to consider as part of adding to our product. So the capabilities there to do that, and it would just be a matter of making the decisions and adding that capability to our native product. I mentioned that there is a new feature that's related to controlling or locking down payroll records as you move through payroll cycle processing. What you're looking at here really is the equivalent of the PR00, but it is much more of a as opposed to an inquiry. It's the one place that you would go to actually run your pay cycle without having to move from one form to the next. And what you'll see is as you move through the cycle, the actions that are available in the ribbon at the top will change based on where you're at in the cycle. So really, you can't do things out of order. The application will only let you do the things that you're able to do, and let you, basically step through without providing a wizard. I wouldn't say that this is, a wizard that guides you through every step, but it does provide a wizard-like experience to be able to help you navigate through the pay cycle process. And then the other thing that's really cool about this is as the pay cycle is calculating, you can actually see the employee and cycle results build and actually view the payments as they are actually being calculated. One of the big differences between the product that's available today in single tenant versus what we have within global HR is that data is now available immediately as soon as a landmark action is complete in a what we call a list or a global HR list. These lists provide a lot more flexibility as it relates to being able to filter information, to be able to personalize. You can create PDF reports from these lists. You can send information to a CSV file. So there's a lot of power there as it relates to these lists as compared with some of the reporting that was in the single tenant product. So I think in terms of implementation, this is probably an area that users will have to adapt to because it is so different. And as part of working with our initial set of ICS team members who were involved with the beta and some of the early adopter projects, initially they were skeptical about this because they were so used to taking things from their CSV piles, putting them into a spreadsheet and doing a lot of work outside of the system. I can now refer you to some converts who can give you, some of the firsthand impressions of sort of moving away from that and using the lists that are there. So again, big difference as it relates to the two products in terms of how you access your data.
Dan, we do have one question here from Joe McDevitt. Is there a significant difference in calculation processing speed between S3 and GHR-Payroll?
So that is a tough question to ask. Depends on, if you're an on-premise customer, depends if you're already in the cloud, depends on a lot of things. So what I would say is that I am still waiting on, performance related reports from the teams that, do this testing for us. So if there is a question, I would need some data from an organization to be able to compare something to. So if we want to get that information for me, Melissa, we can follow back and see what the processing might be as it relates to that customer specific circumstances.
Okay. And he's got, and we'll get that to you offline. He's answered with his info.
Yep, great. And just to tie back to what I mentioned related to the financial, integration. So we have, as I said, it's very tight. There is no creating of files that are being passed back and forth between Global HR and Payroll and CloudSuite Financials. When the closing process is done and we're posting information as part of the posting process, it's actually writing directly to financial tables. And so you're able to see all those transactions from Global HR that have been written to financials. So very, very tight, and it's a very strong integration. Based on what we're hearing, it's customers who are or have both applications are really impressed and like that. Based on what we have delivered so far. So let's talk about product info and documentation. That's a very common question that we're getting. Where can I go to get more information about the product that's been released? So there's a couple of different areas and things that you can be on the lookout for. First thing is the net change report that comes out each month for the multi-tenant updates. There is a component now called HR-Payroll. That is an area, if you're not looking at it, you can start to scan for that if you're looking to see what kind of enhancements are coming into the product. That provides the sort of very highest level of information as it relates to enhancements. And then to go along with that, we actually have started to post more detailed KB documentation based on the KB that you see here. What that does is it provides access to, and I'll show you that in a couple of slides, more step-by-step documentation that provide really a good understanding of how you would configure or process something within the new system. And then along with our other documentation that's available, you can get it through Extreme Support, or you can go to docs.infor.com, and we have the documentation being updated with each CU as new features are being rolled out. So to give you a little bit more of an insight on what I'm talking about relative to the KB, there is this master KB document that you can see listed in the screenshot here. And then within that, we have broken down into these topic areas. So you can see in the column on the right, there's administrative setup, there's configuration, the other things that you see here. We then have the individual KB documents that relate to those areas that are available. And so they're written from the standpoint of, how would you approach something? How do you set something up? How do you enable something? How do you process something? And it provides you step-by-step, instructions on how a user would do that. So it's a really good way to be able to compare to, what the current system does. And, it's really good, training material as it relates to, understanding how to execute something within the system. Last check, I think we had 48 KB documents that were posted out there. We're adding to that repository all the time. I know that there's another one that's in process right now that we'll be adding. So there's a lot of content out there that gives you a good understanding of, how the system works. Then, as I mentioned, we are updating the online documentation each CU as well. So there is, within Global HR, there is the Payroll Administration Guide, and it's broken out, and you can navigate to it the same way you would any of the other Global HR information. So let's talk about beta and early adopter project updates. So right after we launched the product in December, in January, we had our beta customer go live. We had El Centro Valley Municipal Water District, who's really been with us every step of the way. They started off as a lead adopter for Global HR Payroll, then went into a beta, and the first customer to go live. They've been a good partner with Infor overall. They were one of the very first adopters of CloudSuite Financials version 11 as multi-tenant, and are on multi-tenant as it relates to financials, GHR, and payroll. So it's a huge accomplishment for their organization. We have a great relationship with Jim Allerton. He's happy to talk to almost anybody. I referenced the biweekly call that Hans Mueller hosts that he's a frequent attendee of, and they were just earlier this week talking about replication sets. So he's very eager to talk to people, let them know how the product works and how it's working for them. Is also a very good relationship to give us very strong feedback when we need it. So it's a very good relationship, and as positive it is, he tells us when we need to work on things as well. So we're happy to have his organization as a partner with us, and happy that they have moved to where they're at. Let's talk about some other active implementations. I didn't write them all down here, but I did call out, I think, what are good examples of different industries for projects that are in active implementation. First one that you see here is St. Luke's Health System. They're a healthcare organization that is in the process of implementation. NewPay, I'm not sure how aware the user community is, but NewPay is a federal government initiative that it's new to Infor as it relates to payroll. So it's a great new opportunity for us to go in and open a completely new industry for selling our products. There is a proof of concept project that's in process right now. We're also, in addition to implementing, adding some new feature functions that are specific to the federal government. City of Myrtle Beach is interesting because they're a net new. They are not coming from the single tenant product. They weren't a long time Lawson payroll user. So they're a new user that is implementing GHR with payroll. And then City of Greensboro is an existing S3 customer, also existing HRM customer that is also implementing. So, I think we have a good sample of different types of organizations coming from different places that are part of our early adopter projects that are in process right now. In terms of overall adoption, we've actually done very well. So we already have the product license in 21 deals as of this month. I was actually surprised when Matt Bragstad provided that report to me to let me know that it had been included in as many as it has. So really strong adoption as it relates to people starting to license the product. There were questions about, so what has happened with COVID? Has that delayed some projects? And it has. So we did have 3 projects that were in process, or they were in various stages of completing their sign up as an early adopter that we had to stop, put them into pause because of the COVID impact. So there's a very real implication out there as it relates to this impacting things that we want to do and things that our customers want to do. But it hasn't been all bad. I would say that other organizations are still able to move forward. I mentioned there was the one customer that became a very early adopter very quickly. It was within the past couple of weeks where we added a food processor in Texas who is now going to move forward to get rid of the single tenant hybrid and to move forward implementing the new product. So really excited about that. So we have 2. We have the food processing company, and then we have another water district in California that is also going to implement the product. So really excited to see that there is still some momentum there with signing up new early adopters, even in the current situation that we're in.
Hey, Dan, we've got another question about the complexity of those beta customers. Lori Lawrence is asking, how large their payroll is and if they're multi-state, local taxation. So I guess just a general mix of what kind of clients those betas were.
Yeah, so the highest employee count right now is around 17,000 for one organization. We are dealing with multi-state as it relates to a couple of the projects. The federal government project is a bit different because it's for federal agencies, and the federal agencies have employees that could be in all 50 states. So that is a different level of complexity there that doesn't relate to some of these other projects. So I think we have a good sample of employee size, coverage in terms of having to implement and deal with implementation across multiple states, and then also across the different industries. All right, so let's talk about what comes next. So as I mentioned, we have a lot to do with supporting the official launch of the product. What you're going to see is some additional collateral being developed that's going to become available. You'll see some press releases and other externally facing announcements that are going to come out. We're working on some videos. So we already have a couple of videos related to the pay cycle. One is highlighting the lock. Another is focused on the payroll cycle itself. Another is going to be focused on, I think it's either weighted average processing or percent of current earnings. It's one or the other, because that is a process that has changed and shifted away from being batch to more of a real-time based process. And then also a video that's in process related to Symmetry integration. So Symmetry is a form solution that is being implemented within GHR. It can be used for transition management or also is in the employee role. And so because that's so new and different, we are also doing a video for that. And then beyond that, we'll start to crank out some additional videos. And I think the place that we're looking for is the best place to post those right now. But again, that's some of the collateral that's available that you'll see here very soon. Another activity is related to refining our project implementation plans. So we've had the initial beta and early adopter project plans that were built to add a little bit of padding in there because it was a new product. So we're now going to go back to reevaluate the actual hours that were done and come up with more tight estimates as it relates to migrating from the single tenant product to the multi-tenant. So that'll also be something available here very soon. We're going to continue to validate new opportunities for early adopters. So if you're an organization who wants to start their implementation sometime this year still, we are still running the early adopter program. For those of you who might have already gone through this and have had Jennifer Merciel work with you on the CloudSuite financial side. She's also helping us for now with the projects that are on the HCM side. So that is an opportunity that's still there to get some additional support with your project if you want it. And then continue to execute delivery for the projects that are underway. So, as I mentioned, there is a nice spread of projects that are not only being led by our own ICS team, but also by the different partner organizations that we work with. We were able to get a couple rounds of implementation training out to our partners, so they are actually now able to implement the new product. We're going to continue to deliver new enhancements every CU, as I mentioned, so be on the lookout for the net change report when it comes out for changes to global HR-Payroll, and then get a very tight refinement of the product roadmap for 2020. So I mentioned there are some really big, bolder items that are out there relative to the industry specializations and some country localizations. So now that we've got the product out the door and declared GA for US, we're now looking at providing more precise estimates on when these additional features will be available. And as part of the initiative that is to release roadmaps for external audiences, you'll start to see payroll items that are included in those overall roadmaps of global HR and the other HCM products. So let's talk a little bit about things that are down the road. So what I'm showing you here relates to HCM Mobile, and this is actually something that is available today for HCM. But what you're going to start to see is payroll being able to take advantage of the framework that already exists for HCM Mobile, and then to start to add payroll features to these mobile applications. So for instance, paychecks are there as an option. So right now, even for organizations who are using the single tenant payroll product, they were able to, through mobile, to be able to see paycheck information in the examples that you see here. We'll do the same thing and provide the same capability for the multi-tenant product, but then also as part of future and down the road, provide some interactive capabilities. So aside from just expanding and drilling into information, we want to add even more interactive capabilities than what already exists today. Infor Go is another mobile option that's out there that you can see provides, in addition to the other mobile features that are mentioned, additional things relative to push notifications and inbox and all those things. This is something that has been communicated. The primary focus has been really on HCM as it relates to global HR and the other modules, but we'll also start to leverage this framework to release payroll-based capabilities as well. I think as part of the environment that we're in with people having to work more remotely these days than they used to before, that having the ability to access applications through the different mobile options is going to be very important for organizations moving forward. I have heard that our first organization to go live, Elsinore Valley, has done some payroll processing on the mobile device. I don't know to the extent they're running the whole cycle. That's something I want to have a conversation with Jim about, but there's a picture of him going around somewhere that where he's actually showing some of the things that he's doing relative to running a pay cycle on his mobile phone. So that's all exciting stuff. And again, looking to take advantage of the mobile options that are there and add payroll capabilities to that. As it relates to AI and Coleman, so a lot of the material that has presented up to now has all been focused really on capabilities relative to HCM that were already there within global HR. So now that we have payroll available, we'll start to actually take a look and add some standard features for payroll cycle and payroll processing capabilities leveraging Coleman. So not something that we're working on today, but definitely something that we're thinking about. And again, leveraging what's already been done for global HR and applying that to payroll as well. All right, so that is the update as it relates to slides that I wanted to share for today. I wanted to make sure I left time for questions. So Melissa, I think you said from the show and tell there were some questions that were deferred from that show and tell session for now. So if we want to go ahead and cover some of those, then I think now is a good time.
Yeah, hopefully they came because I did not capture them. I just was listening in, but we do have a couple here. Anthony Hernandez over at Albuquerque Public Schools is asking if there are any early adopter school districts.
Okay, so when we have gotten a little closer with completing the development of teacher contracts, then we'll start to look for some early adopters. Right now, we don't have any. Right now, the target date for the availability of teacher contracts with the new product is the second half of 2021. So if someone is interested, then please reach out to me and we can have an initial conversation about timing and so forth and what might be involved with that, but not ready to sign up somebody right now to be an early adopter because of that limitation.
Okay. Another question here from Joe. Will clients still need a third-party software to produce W-2s?
Yeah, so as part of the like-for-like based approach that we took, we started with what the single-tenant product does today. And right now that for producing forms and so forth, that does require coordinating with MHC or some other similar vendor that provides forms printing and production services. But you may be aware that on the financial side, that product team has already started to adopt Infor document management and some of the capabilities that it has as it relates to creating forms. And so once there are some security issues addressed with us being able to use IDM for HCM related purposes, then we will start to be able to roll out and adopt for HCM some of the IDM capabilities that are already being done for financials. So short term, right now, it's the same as the current state that we have today, where there is a dependency on a provider for producing these forms. But the longer term view is that we would have an option to be able to do those using a tool set that is delivered with the Cloud Suite.
Great, great. Another one we have here from Lori. When do you expect payroll will be mobile enabled?
Well, for purposes of, I'm sorry, I was trying to stop sharing, and I think I've, let me see.
Yeah,
here.
if you just click on that little monitor button on the bottom with the settings, that'll stop your sharing.
All right, I'm trying, it went away, and let's see.
There it is.
Is it gone now?
It is, well, it says screen share. It's still showing a box, but yeah, there, it's gone. Yes, you're good.
Good. So, so for purposes of being mobile enabled, the new user interface allows you to view the application on your mobile device. However, it's not optimized. There are some areas where you would have to do a lot of scrolling. So I wouldn't say, hey, try to go use GHR or even payroll using your mobile device today. So I think we'll start to see as we consider what would be some good options for either Infor Go or some of the other HCM mobile that you'll start to see some specific payroll functions. Right now there aren't, aside from the paycheck view, there aren't specific paycheck or payroll related functions that have been added to those mobile applications. But I would say that is something that's coming either later this year or first part of next year.
Great, thanks. Just asking, thinking ahead for year-end updates, should clients expect multiple CUs during December and January for updates or only one per month?
So that's a good question. So we did talk about that relative to the challenges that we had with all the W-4 updates that sort of came in last minute this year. So there is the standard CU schedule that we would intend to stick to, but in the event there is something that comes up that does not fit within the standard CU schedule, there is an emergency CU update option that will allow us to get a patch in for something that falls in between the planning for the standard CU schedule updates. Fortunately, we didn't have to do that this year for global HR, but just sort of based on lessons learned for what happened and the possibility that it could conceivably come up again, we do have an option for that. So the plan is to only have one, but in the event that we need to have another, then we could do that via that emergency CU update.
Thank you. So far, that is oh, here we go. There was a notice on COVID updates that came out. Can you provide a recap of what the updates in payroll are related to COVID?
Yeah, so there were two things that we did for single tenant payroll. One was a new report that would allow organizations to be able to monitor the compliance with state minimum wage, with the daily limits for extended paid sick leave and the paid sick leave as it relates to the daily limits and also the cumulative totals. So that is a new report that allows you to generate exceptions for time records that exceed those limits. So that was one feature that was added to single tenant. Conversely, we didn't have to add an equivalent to global HR-Payroll for that. What we found is that the lists that are already there allow you to be able to filter in and to monitor for that type of activity a lot easier than what we had. So we didn't have to do an equivalent enhancement for global HR-Payroll as we did for the single tenant payroll. So that was one update. The second was for, in reaction to a BSI change. It was for a bulletin that came out where new tax types and earning codes were made available to allow organizations to take advantage of some of the credits related to the CARES Act. We did apply that in both applications. So both global HR-Payroll and also single tenant payroll support those changes that are related to, I believe it was bulletin number 188 that added those new options via the BSI updates. So those are the two specific COVID-related changes that that came out that we reacted to. As I mentioned, we only had to apply one to the new product.
Thank you. Looks like there has not been any others come through. So are there any other questions? And we do have Joe's profile, so I don't know how you want to get back with him on kind of that processing speed question.
Sure. You can contact me via email. That's fine. I will. Do they have my email as me being a presenter as part of this forum, Melissa?
I don't. I'm not too sure. I mean, I don't think so. I think we just put people's names.
My profile. But,
okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Then you should be able to find it, Joe, on Dan's profile if you search through the People tab.